Shalom. This is Yair, Davidiy, speaking from the land of Israel. We are continuing our studies, our talks concerning the lost 10 tribes. We identify the lost 10 tribes, that is, those Israelites who lost consciousness of their ancestry, who were assimilated, one could say, amongst the Gentile nations, but retained a tribal cohesion. They stayed together to some degree. And they remain, and they are destined to return. There were 12 tribes of Israel, originally 12 tribes of Israel. These tribes are divided into two different sections. The southern section, that is the tribes of Judah, Levi, Benjamin, and minority sections of the other tribes remained in the south. They remained in the kingdom of Judah. They were not exiled by the Assyrians. They were exiled later, after the Assyrians exiled the 10 tribes. The southern section was exiled by the Babylonians, but they stayed together, remained Jewish, kept the Jewish religion, kept the faith of Moses, and they remained recognizable as who they are. The Jewish people are descended from them. But apart from them, there were 10 of the tribes who were separated from the others. The 10 northern tribes were exiled by the Assyrians, who were taken away to different areas of exile. And they lost awareness of their ancestry, they lost awareness of who they are. They stopped practicing Judaism, they stopped keeping the Mosaic faith, which originally they had kept. And they became lost. But nevertheless, physically they remained, according to prophecy, according to different sources, rabbinical sources, different legends, archaeological findings, linguistics. They remained recognizable. And they eventually migrated in several different pathways, in several different ways. They migrated, converging in the end in Western Europe, in areas of Western Europe. And they settled there, and they're to be found amongst these West European nations. We do not say that everyone in those areas is descended from Israel. We do not say that they're all Hebrews. We are saying that is where the lost 10 tribes are. That is where they settled. They are a significant proportion of the population. Whether a majority or not, we don't know, but they were significant and they influenced the national character of these peoples, and they are destined to return and to reunite with Judah and to become once again an Israelite people. And things will develop, things will happen. How it will happen, when it will happen, we don't know. All we know is that is where the lost 10 tribes are. We're destined to be, and they're the task to play. And it is our task to make this known to them, or make this known to the Jews, or make this known to the world, to make this known to whoever resonates with this, feels that it says something to them, because it should say something to those who are affected by it. We find the lost 10 tribes, descendants of the lost 10 tribes, to be to a significant degree amongst the peoples of the USA, of the UK, that is Britain, of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands, that is Holland, Belgium, France, as well as groups in South Africa and elsewhere. And this is where the lost 10 tribes are. And it sounds like a lot of nations, but it's not that many, and we're not saying that everyone in those amongst those peoples is from the lost 10 tribes. We're just saying the lost 10 tribes are there. And also the prophecy, the blessings, prophecies concerning lost 10 tribes said that they would be a numerous number of peoples, that a great number of peoples would eventually be found to be descended from Israel, and they will return. So this is also according to the prophecy, that a large number of people on a worldwide scale will be found to have been descended from Israel. And this is how we find that these prophecies having been fulfilled, as long as other prophecies which we have listed and spoken about in other talks. And so we have these lost 10 tribes. In addition to the lost 10 tribes, we have the Jews. The Jewish people are, as we said, were descended from the tribes of Judah, Levi, Benjamin, with the minority representations of all of the other tribes. The Jews, these tribes are to be found amongst the Jewish people. They are the Jewish people. The Jewish people are Judah of the Bible. According to the Bible, the figurehead or the figure of Judah represents all of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are to be found amongst that the Jews, they are Judah of the Bible. And they also may also include descendants of Gentiles whose ancestors converted to Judaism. This was how it was supposed to be. Whether these descendants of converts or Gentiles are a large proportion or not doesn't really matter. Judah was supposed to take in converts. This was part of the promise, part of the goal of Judah, whose goal was to learn the Torah, develop the Torah, and take in converts. And Judah has done this, whether all of them descend from Jews, that is from Judah, from the original tribes or not, doesn't matter. The Jewish faith defines who Judah is in biblical terms, and that is what concerns us. We go according to what the Bible tells us. So we have Judah, we have the Jewish people. The Jewish people have suffered. They've been persecuted, they've been thrown out from one place to another, they've been maligned, denigrated, persecuted, discriminated against, they've been killed. All kinds of horrible things have been done to them throughout their history. Just recently we had the Holocaust. Now we have the Arabs. The Arabs attacked the Jews in Arab countries. They forced them to leave, and they took away their property, and they stole from them and hurt them, and so on. And many more Jews were actually refugees from Arab countries, from Muslim lands, than Arabs were refugees from Palestine. But nevertheless, the world is concerned about Palestine. The world is concerned about refugees. It's concerned about Palestinian refugees. A good proportion of all of the declarations of the United Nations concern the Palestinian and Palestinian rights, even though the Palestinians should be only a minority, a small preoccupation. It should only take up a small proportion of the time of international discussions, even if all the claims against Israel were true, and they are not. But even if they were, it would still deserve proportionally a much small percentage of the time of preoccupation of other nations than it does now. The only real reason one can explain for the preoccupation, for the incessant, ongoing solidarity with Palestinians in suffering, so-called suffering, or their problems, Palestinian problems, is because this is a way to get at the Jews. This is a way to hurt the Jews. Ever since the Holocaust and what happened, so it's been somewhat not respectable to directly attack the Jews, even though they do. Even though people do attack the Jews, it's lost something of its respectability that it has in the past. So indirectly, through supporting the Palestinians and criticizing Israel over its relationship to the Palestinians, it is possible to hurt the Jews. The state of Israel now contains half the Jews in the world. And it is the life source of the Jewish people. It is the place where the Jews originated from, where they give expression to their ancestry, to their Jewishness, where they speak Hebrew, where many of them keep the commandments, where they learn Torah, where they are conscious of being Jews, and they're not subject to Gentile commitments and commandments, and so on. Even though a lot of the people in Israel are secular and go against the Jewish religion, they still have some faith. Many of them are traditional, and in many ways they are still faithful. And this is what it was prophesied it would be. This is how Judah was prophesied to be. And this is what Judah is today. So therefore we have this reality. We have the Jews on one side, that is Judah on the one side, and the 10 tribes on the other. And we also have this in-your-face hatred of the Jews, which is cloaked to some degree through solidarity with the Palestinians. The Palestinians are being exploited. They are being used as an excuse to hurt the Jewish people. And all nations of the earth almost all nations of the earth are a party in this. A good majority of the nations in the United Nations have voted against Israel, condemning Israel, whilst ignoring the plight of numerous other minority groups who are also in a much worse situation than the Palestinians ever were or ever could be. But these other peoples are ignored because they do not have a Jewish aspect to them. They do not provide a way for the hatred of the Gentile heathen nations to hurt the Jews, whereas the Palestinian cause does. So, most of the peoples, the Arabs and the third world countries and Russian countries and backward countries attack the Jews, but we also get progressive countries. We get countries which we otherwise identify as Israelite who also criticise the Jews, who criticise Israel, and through defending or claiming, purporting to defend the Palestinians. And this is a problem. This is a problem. The Palestinians today receive support and money from numerous nations, such as Germany, Japan, Arab nations, China, Russia, and so on. These are all basically non-Israelite nations. They are the equivalent of heathen Gentiles. But as we said, we also find amongst those who support the Palestinians and nations amongst whom we find Israelites, whom we identified as somehow containing the lost 10 tribes amongst them. Ireland has descendants of the lost 10 tribes amongst them, but is a firm supporter, a traditional supporter of the Palestinian cause. Is usually against Israel. In Dublin, for 1 week of the year, they fly the Palestinian flag out of solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Out of all the humanitarian causes in the world, it is the Palestinian flag that they choose to fly, because that is a way of getting at the Jews. So they too are infected, have this disease of Jew hatred within them, and so this needs some type of explanation. Also, Sweden is often critical of Israel, and Sweden is also one of the Israelite nations. So too with Norway. But it is not black and white. Norway regularly gives money to the Palestinians now. In the past, there were times, situations when Norway helped Israel. So even Sweden at one time was favourable on occasions. So too the UK, USA, Switzerland, Netherlands, Belgium, Iceland, France, even though they have times have been against Israel and have supported the Palestinians, and their media tells lies and spreads infectious libels against the Jewish people. Even so, these nations at times have helped Israel, so this is a problem. Australia and Canada have also been critical of Israel, but on the whole less than the others. On the whole they've been pro-Israel, at least publicly, at least in their open international affairs, on the whole, with exceptions. So too with Finland and Denmark, they've been favourable on the whole, but not always so. It's a complicated matter. We talk speaking of decades, of changes of time, of long periods of time, when governments change, when public opinions change, when the circumstances alter, and we have differences, different historical experiences, different modes of expression, different opportunities, different situations. So we are generalising. We have to generalise. Nevertheless, through these generalisations, we can make deductions. Deductions are valid, at least to some degree. So very roughly, with numerous exceptions, it may be said that nations of Joseph, the nations on the 10 tribes, amongst the 10 tribes were the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. These are the English-speaking nations, the USA, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So on the whole, the nations associated with Joseph have been pro-Israel, been in favour of Israel, possibly with the exception of New Zealand, but all the others, on the whole, have been more pro-Israel than the other nations. So Joseph, on the whole, has been in favour of the Jews, has been in favour of the Jews in the land of Israel. And these nations, all the nations we're speaking about, the lost 10 tribes, in their attitude to the Jewish and the state of Israel, this is part of their task. According to biblical and rabbinical commentaries, the task of the 10 tribes was to lose their identity. They were to become like the Gentiles, but they were to evolve upward and to reform the rest of the world in the process through their own evolution, or help the rest of the world elevate itself, rise up. And this is what they have done to some degree. And belong to the 10 tribes means that one is of Israelite descent but not Jewish. One is a Hebrew but not Jewish. So, in such cases, they do not have to convert at present. They do not have to become Jewish. They do not have to come to Israel. They have a task of their own and a place of their own. And they have things of their own to do. In the future, things might change. We're talking about the present as far as we understand it, according to biblical and related sources. This is the situation. But they should begin to be aware of who they are and where they come from. This question of their ancestry, their Israelite ancestry, should be made known to them. They should be faced with it. They should be challenged with it. And they should endeavour to clarify it. And also we too should be supported in our efforts to spread this information, to research it, to deepen our research of it, to bring more facts to light, to re-examine existing conclusions, existing knowledge. We need to revise historical understanding needs to be revised. A lot of mistakes exist in chronology, for instance, which confuses people, leads to a false impression, strong conclusions, because historical proof does exist in a raw material form. It needs to be refined, it needs to be evaluated, it needs to be placed in its correct context and with one fact compared to another and placed in its overall relevant framework. And all of this, when done correctly, does show that the lost 10 tribes are amongst those nations. And this is what has to be publicised and realised and brought to the consciousness of as many people as possible, especially those to whom it most concerns, to whom it is most relevant. So we have this situation of the Jews being persecuted, the Jews being picked upon or discriminated against, and the state of Israel suffering because the state of Israel represents the Jews. And we have amongst the Israelite nations elements that attack the Jews, that are against the Jews all the time, but we also have elements that are pro-Jewish amongst these nations more than amongst other nations. And amongst these Israelite nations are to be found nearly all the countries that at some stage or other did in fact help Israel or help the Zionist cause when it was needed assistance. And relatively speaking, these nations may be considered Gentiles or heathen Gentiles because according to the law they are not Jewish, they are not obligated by the law at present. This may change in the future. All we can say concerning them is that there's a good chance, a high degree of probability that a significant proportion of them are descended from Israelites. Nevertheless, they should know this, this should be made known, and it should be deepened and worked upon and developed and propagated. This is important knowledge. And these peoples, also in addition to being having an ambivalent attitude towards the Jews, sometimes helping the state of Israel, sometimes being against it, we also find amongst the descendants of these peoples in other places, for instance, descendant in the USA. We often find amongst the USA, when we have exceptions, we have people, groups amongst the population of the USA, or exceptional individuals that go out of the way to identify with the state of Israel, help the state of Israel. And very often a good proportion of these people who identify with the Jews, who help the state of Israel, of these good Gentiles, very often when we see where they came from, where their ancestors came from, so they too are descended from Israelite nations in Europe. And even those who are not came to the USA because an ancestral call was pushing them to reunite with their brothers, to go forward and to leave where they were and to go to this Israelite place which the USA represents. And so too in other areas, in Australia, New Zealand, England even. So this rule applies. And not only that, but the nations in question, on the whole, are the most blessed nations on earth. They are promised blessings according to the Bible, and these blessings have been fulfilled within them by commonly accepted parameters. They are the most blessed, the most healthy, the longest lived compared to other nations. They are the richest. They have the best educations. They are the most advanced. They have the most security. Their families are most stable. On the whole, with large exceptions and things are changing from day to day, but we're talking in the long run. This is the impression we have. They are valuable people. They are quality people. They are considered the most civilized. Other nations look up to them, wish to be part of them, would like to live amongst them, would like to copy, to learn the good things about them. And potentially these nations have the most influence and the most importance. They can do the most good, or God forbid, they can be the most negative if they move in the wrong direction. So they are worthwhile investigating in, because the highest returns can come from them, or the highest degree of harm may be averted by correct teachings in their direction. And some of these people have mistaken prejudice against the Jews. They've been misled by their teachers, by their leaders, by their media reports. The media reports say horrible things that the Israelites are doing, the Israelis are doing in Israel, and it's not true in many cases, so it's been perverted. But these people have a natural feeling of justice, need to do justice, of humanitarian brotherhood and empathy for other peoples. And when they see what the Jews are purported to do, they become against the Israelis. They are misled, or they are liable to be misled. So correct teaching and a correct approach to them can avert these negative results. And by publishing the facts and placing the facts before them and teaching them about the Israelite origins, some good may come of it. It can be done. It may be done. And it's worth looking into and developing. And so this is what we say should be done. That the truth of our teachings of Brit-Am Hebraic tribes should be spread to them, should be given unto them, and should be made known unto them. So this is what we are asking you to help do, to believe in us, to help us, to take an interest in us, because we have an important message, and our message is important, and it is of great utility and a great potential positivity. And in addition to that, we have another point which is worth noting. Perhaps later we will write more on it or develop it more, but here in a rough outline, the present situation is comparable in some ways to the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. The Israelites were in Egypt. They were subjected to Egypt. The Egyptians oppressed them. They came out of Egypt. They were led by Moses. They went through the wilderness. After about the wilderness of receiving the Torah and passing from one area to another, they came to the edges, the boundaries of Canaan, and then they sent spies in. They sent in spies to espionage the area, to inquire about the area, to examine the area that they were to come into. They sent 12 tribes, important members of each tribe sent one person as a spy. And each spy was an important person in that tribe. They were princes, and they went in and they came back with a report. And out of the 12 tribes who came in, 10 of them brought back a bad report, a negative report about the land. And as a result, the people were disheartened and rebelled against God and spoke against God, and as a result God was angry with them, and they were condemned to wander for 40 years in the wilderness until all that generation should die out, and only their children who would come after them would enter the land and conquer the land instead of them. So this is what happened when the 10 of the 12 tribes brought back the negative report, and all the spies were destined to die, apart from the 2 spies who brought back a positive report. 2 out of the 12 tribes, 2 out of the 12 spies had positive good things to say about the land, and they were blessed, and they would not die, and they would participate in inheriting the land. And the 2 spies were Yehoshua from the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb, also pronounced as Caleb, from the tribe of Judah. And Yehoshua from the tribe of Joshua, he had his name changed from Hosea or Hosea. See Numbers 3:16. Originally his name was Hosea, and it was changed by Moses to Yehoshua. So Yehoshua was originally named Hosea, see 13:6. And Hosea, that is Joshua, was destined to lead the tribes after the death of Moses and to conquer the land of Canaan. He was destined to lead them. And according to Maimonides, he had the status of a king, because the commandments and the exhortations given unto him were later used as a basis for the laws concerning a king. So Joshua could be considered from that point of view as the first king of Israel. Afterwards, the tribe of Ephraim separated from Judah, led the lost 10 tribes, led the 10 tribes to be a separate kingdom, and then they were conquered by the Assyrians and taken into exile. The last king of the 10 tribes before they were exiled was also called Hosea. The same as Joshua, his real name had been Hosea, so to the last king of the northern tribes was called Hosea. So the first and last king had the same name, Hosea. We see it in 2 Kings 17:6, in the 9th year of Hosea, sometimes written as Hoshea, it's the same thing. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away to Assyria and placed them in Halak and by Habor, the river of Gozan, and the cities of the Medes. So the first and last king of the Israelites, of the northern Israelites, had the same name, Hosea. Hosea also being another name for Joshua. Not only that, but at the same time, in this same period when the Israelites were exiled, lived the prophet Hosea, who also had the same name, the prophet Hosea. He too was a prince. He was the son of the leader of the tribe of Reuben. Hosea lived at that time, was a prophet. He prophesied concerning the lost 10 tribes. His book, the book of Hosea in the Bible, 14 chapters, it is occupied mainly with the lost 10 tribes and what was going to happen to them in the time of Hosea, in his own time, and also what would happen to them in the future. And we have spoken about this, written books about it, so this too is worth noting. And so we find there were 12 tribes, one spy from each of the tribes went into the Canaan. 10 of the tribes returned with a bad report. This caused the Israelites to rebel. Because they rebelled, they were punished. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And that was what happened. But there were 2 exceptions, Caleb from the tribe of Judah and Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim. And they were accepted, and we find that a discussion of this is described in Numbers chapter 14. Numbers chapter 14, verse 20, it says, "And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to your word. But truly, as I live, all the earth shall be filled by the glory of the Lord. Because all these men who have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness have put me to the test now these 10 times. 10 times the Israelites had rebelled against God. And they had not passed the test. And have not heeded my voice, they did not listen to me. They certainly shall not see the land of which I swore to their fathers. They would not come into the land. Nor shall any of those who rejected me see it. Neither shall any of those who rejected me see it. But my servant Caleb from Judah, my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him, and has followed me fully. I will bring into the land where he went." Caleb would come into the land, and his descendants shall inherit it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites who dwell in the valley tomorrow turn and move out into the wilderness by way of the Red Sea. Here God is speaking to Moses, and he is telling them what would happen, and he's telling them because the Israelites rebelled against him and not entered the land as they should have done, they would be punished. Apart from the 2 spies who had brought back a positive report. And he continues, verse 26. "The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, How long shall I bear with this evil congregation who complain against me? I have heard the complaints which the children of Israel make against me. Say to them, As I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will do to you. The carcasses, that is the bodies of you who have complained against me, shall fall in this wilderness. All of you were numbered according to your entire number, from 20 years and above, except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. You shall by no means enter the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, that is your children, whom you said would be victims, they complained, said our children will die because of you. You led us out of Egypt, and now we are going to be killed in the land of Canaan, and our children will be orphans. So God says, no, you will die in your wilderness, but your children whom you said would be orphans, they will come into the land, they will inherit the land. I will bring in, this is what the Bible continues to say, I will bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. As for you, your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherds in the wilderness 40 years. The coming into the land would be delayed for 40 years because they rebelled against Moses and Aaron, and they rebelled against God by bringing a bad report, by believing bad, negative reports about the land. And bear the fruit of your infidelity, their lack of faith, their lack of faithfulness, till your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness. So that is, this is how they were condemned, and this is what happened. So we have parallels with what is going on today. There are parallels between this and the situation in our time. Joshua later led the Israelites in conquering the land, as we said. He was from the tribe of Ephraim. Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim. The tribe of Judah also played a pioneering role, a major role in conquering Canaan. They were led by Caleb. Caleb was the other spy who brought back a good report. Caleb from the tribe of Judah and Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim were the two spies who brought back the good report. And Judges 1, we hear 1, after the death of Joshua came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall be the first to go up against the Canaanites to fight against them? And the Lord says, that as God said, Judah shall go up. Judah shall be the first to go up. Judah shall be the first to lead the conquest. Indeed, I have delivered the land into his hand. That is in Judges 1, verses 1 and 2. So too in recent times we have a similar scenario. Originally the land of, not originally, but in recent times the land of Canaan, the land is now known as Palestine, and now where the state of Israel occupies a portion of this land. Also, Syria is also part of the original Promised Land and other areas in the Middle East, but so this portion of the land was ruled over by the Ottoman Turks. The Muslim Turks ruled over it. In the First World War, the Turks were allies of the Germans and the Austrians. The Germans and the Austrians and the Turks fought against their allies. They fought against the British and Americans and other people. Towards the end of the war, the British, together with the Australians and New Zealanders and others, they conquered the Palestine. They conquered it and began to rule over it. In 1917, they liberated it from the Ottoman Turks. After that, the British published the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which showed that they were intended to create a Jewish state in the land of Palestine, which is what they did. They were given a mandate by the League of Nations, the equivalent of the United Nations at that time, and they began to develop the land, and also Jews, Zionists came in and developed the land, and the land began to grow, and from that we had the basis, the beginnings of what later became the State of Israel, which was created in 1948. In 1948, the Jews fought against Arab nations and defeated them. After that, the State of Israel moved from one situation to another. There were frequent wars, there were terror attacks by the Arabs, there were problems, there were economic problems, there were defense problems, there were all kinds of situations, but the State of Israel, thank God, got through them all and managed to get through them all. And at times the State of Israel received assistance from Norway, from Denmark, from Netherlands, from France, from Belgium, Switzerland and other nations. All Israelite nations, or mainly Israelite nations, helped the Israelites. So too the British helped occasionally, even though the British media was prejudiced against the State of Israel, and still is. The British public on the whole was in favour of the State of Israel. Not when Britain did help Israel, though at times it also helped the Arabs, or came again, criticised Israel, depending upon the government, depending upon the situation. On the whole, Australia and Canada helped Israel. And this is what we have. In the USA, one that deviated from time to time, on the whole was in favour of the State of Israel. At times it was against it, but on the whole it was in favour of the State of Israel, to help the State of Israel, to help bankroll, help pay the debts of the Jewish nation, help pay for Israel to survive in many cases. It gave great aid, great assistance to Israel. It got much back for it. It wasn't doing it entirely through altruistic motives. It was worth its while from an international, geopolitical point of view, for every penny or every cent you put into Israel got much more back. But it was doing this because its heart, or the will of its public, wanted this to be done. And then from time to time, even now, the relationship between the USA and Israel is even closer, more friendlier than it ever was, and they recognise that they need each other. They are good for each other. God willing, they will continue this recognition. So this is the situation where we have it. So on the whole, we can say that amongst the 10 tribes, America and Britain and the British offshoots such as Canada, Australia and New Zealand, all connected to Joseph. Britain and its offshoots, the daughter nations, relate to Ephraim. The USA relates to Manasseh, but it has many from Ephraim in amongst it, and as we have discussed on certain situations, America may also be identified as Ephraim because many from Ephraim dwell amongst it, and it works together with Ephraim, and it fulfills the role of Ephraim. So we have these nations of Ephraim helping the Jewish people, and we have the Jewish people in the land, developing the land and pushing forward the infrastructure and everything which the land needs. So we have a repeat of the situation with where we had Caleb from Judah and Yair from Ephraim in favour of settling in the land and doing something in connection with it, whereas the other spies, the other tribes, were critical, and this is what we find. We find the other Israelite nations, relatively speaking, especially in recent times, to be against the Jews in the land of Israel, and this is the situation. So we see a biblical parallel here. We see a repeat, a biblical pattern, historical pattern based upon tribal identifications of what happened in the past, happening now before our eyes. So this is what we have. May the Lord God of Israel bless you, may He be with you and help you, and may He help all of us. Thank you.